Here. Item 3, Historical Society discussion. I ask if anybody's going to speak on behalf of the public, this society, that we come up to the mic, because we're getting some complaints about audio. But we'll start with that, and organizational structure was the first item under the Historical Society information.
Good evening. Just a couple of opening remarks. First of all, we are well aware that you represent the taxpayers of Bucksport and have to be mindful of that. We are also aware that any town government or organization, the needs are up here and resources tend to be here. And that requires, of course, prioritization. When we first approached you, however many years ago, about this project, our main concern, well, we had two concerns. The main one was the ground moisture problem, which is unabated and will continue in the present site. And the other is that we are not ADA, what's the word?
Compliant.
Thank you, compliant. The priority of this project, I think, gets elevated when we look at the risk associated with a flood, because the flood has the potential to basically wipe out the whole museum and the collection itself. And we also see this as has to be a collaborative project between the town and the Historical Society. I will start speaking on the agenda, but I want to point out, after the last meeting, I went home, and this project is like a giant jigsaw puzzle with so many pieces to try to fit together. And the discussion, often on both sides, is almost like a pinball machine. And the teacher in me came through, and I'll pass this around, and I call it In Pursuit of a Plan. It's not in place of your agenda, but it's just my thoughts of some of the issues that have been raised. And the one big issue I neglected to put in there, and probably the most important of all, is site selection. So after I speak, and then Betty is going to speak, at the end of the agenda, I'd like Larry Wall, he has drawn up a complete list of site options with the pros and cons, and I'd like for him to be able to present that to you. Okay, organizational structure. Our organization has an oversight board of directors, which is the 4 offices plus 3 members. And the offices are president. The president at this point is Ed Buck. I'm the vice president. And Chris Johnson is the secretary. And Val Schaffner is the treasurer. And the 3 members of the board of directors from the membership, the chair of the board of directors is Betty LaForge, who, by the way, I think will be the next president, Larry Wall, and Linda Moore. Annual operating budget. Well, it probably will surprise you to hear we do not have a formal budgeting process. Our income sources, we have 3 streams of income: dues, donations by visitors, and fundraising. This year, in donations at the museum, we brought in $1,938. Excuse me. In terms of a fundraiser this year, we did calendars, as we did last year, featuring local photographers, and the dues and that other small contributions accounted for $3,100. What do we do with the money? Well, we have certain obligations that any organization has: insurance, water, lights, and we have been undertaking for the last several years a complete inventory of the museum, which to our knowledge had never been done. And the inventory system that we use is called Past Perfect, which most historical societies do use. It's recommended by museum professionals. And the process, you take each item, you assign it a number, you photograph it, you explain its location in the museum, and then Chris and his wife enter it into Past Perfect. The end goal, hopefully we're near the end of the inventory process. I think most that is left is Chris is scanning historical documents, and I think that's, but the physical objects have all been inventoried. And at some point with Past Perfect, my understanding is it would be online.
That's the plan.
And people from home could view if there's a particular object they want to see. So in addition to, and that's about $700 some a year. Huh?
For the Past
$750.
Perfect, Gary?
Past Perfect, okay? But in addition to that, we've always been solvent. We still are, because the biggest fundraiser we do every 2 years, and that's the Historic Home Tour. And that brings in a lot of money. And we do that every other year.
$6,075 last year.
Yeah, 6,075 last year. And that's, we do every 2 years, so next year we should be doing that again. But also, what we have managed to do over the last several years are some internal improvements. We had to replace the toilet. We did that. Probably one of the biggest projects was installing additional lighting and upgrading the lighting to LED, because that's less harmful to your artifacts. And this year, we're concentrating, under Betty's guidance, with getting proper archival storage boxes and file folders that will better preserve documents and items. Fundraising. Annual donations, that I think I already covered. That was the 1,900. And calendar sales and dues, the treasurer tells me was around 3,100. Fundraising plan. Back in December, when I always forget the name, but the Penobscot Estuary Grant had the 20 million set aside for projects downriver. And we knew it was a long shot, but we did submit, and Larry did a lot of work on it, as others did submit a proposal that would have fully funded this project. And that would have been a godsend if it had been approved. Unfortunately, it wasn't. So in fundraising, most grants that you can apply for tend to have a cap, anywhere from 10,000 or 50,000. And so you're constrained there. In terms of federal grants, I know that question came up. I get a monthly newsletter, grants from the federal government, and I peruse it looking for any type of grant that might be applicable. The only one so far I've come across is called Inspire for Small Museums. And I was quite excited because you could get up to $25,000. However, one of their requirements is that you must have a paid or unpaid full-time museum specialist on your staff. We're not in a position to do that. And most small museums that I know, local historical societies, are not. So it's a program for small museums in places like maybe Bar Harbor or Castine, but not an Orland or a Prospect or even a Bucksport. And so I guess we need to find a minuscule museum grant. The grant options, the only one that I foresee where you could get more is the Libra Foundation. They do quite generous grants. Usually their list, and they have funded museums. Most of their museum grants have been $100,000. They, of course, have funded, well, they bought half the town of Monson and spent millions. That, you can apply once a year. And so the next time we can apply would be a deadline of February 15th, 2025. We have applied to them several times before. This last year, we applied for the Mill Museum. Lieber has turned us down more times than a bed sheet, but keep on trying. And I want to throw out the idea, if we pursue a Libra Foundation grant, how much should we reasonably go for? And should it be a joint project between the town and the Historical Society? I just throw that out for consideration. There are other smaller grants, the Community Development Foundation, $10,000 cap. T-Mobile has a grant program. We applied for that for the Mill Museum. That's very competitive because it's nationwide, so. But we keep looking, considering the possibilities. And there used to be, through the Maine Community Foundation, there used to be a Belvedere grant for historic preservation. And that you had to be on the National Register or qualify to be on it. And I think the cap back then was
It's 10,000.
50,000.
And it still exists. It's been folded into another grant program, and that
That's
deadline
right.
is
But now the
February.
cap, I believe, is 10,000.
It's 10,000.
Yes, they folded it into a community
Building,
building
yeah,
and dropped the cap from 50 to 10.
yeah. And for full disclosure, I manage that grant program, so I'll withdraw on any discussion, like vote on that particular piece.
Yeah.
But just for logistics, it's $10,000.
Right.
Opens in November, closes February 15th.
Yes.
And it's competitive.
So these are the constraints. Obviously, we want to do what we can, but these are the constraints that we operate under.
You want to,
Do you have a question? or-
You say constraints, and you talk, well, 10 grand, small, 10 grand times 20, is that your number? Do you know what I mean? So every 10 grand is 10 grand.
Yeah,
So I'm just, I think 10 grand, that's a lot of money. So if you can do 20 grants,
yes. But
but the reality of getting
yeah,
$10,000.
But if
not
I get a-
only that,
if-
most grants, when you apply, they have whatever their deadline of application, most grants, you have to specify, or they specify when the grant money has to be spent. And they're not all going to align, all 20 are not going to align this.
I understand that, sir. I totally do. But me personally, the way I guess I look at it, if
Mhm.
I'm looking to a project, I'm looking at your number that you put on here, 221 grand. Okay? If I'm looking, all right, I know that we want to spend 221 grand, and I want to raise a lot of that in grant money, or someone is, I'm going to partner with someone, like the city, and I want to raise half of it, or whatever. I'm going to put in for every grant that I think fits it, right? Whether I'm going to get it or not. Is that a lot of work for us or whoever's writing them? Yes. We do grants all the time at my job. A lot of federal grants, right? I'm in
Yeah,
law enforcement,
law
so we do a
enforcement,
lot. We do a lot of federal grants,
Yeah.
but we might put in for 10 grants this year. and we might not get one, okay, but we're gonna put in for them. And I understand it, but
Yeah,
I'm
no.
still gonna put in for them.
Yeah, well, there's a few,
Yes, go ahead.
Just to unpack a few things, and to your point, a lot of the grants, because we own the property, they would need a commitment prior to submission for the grant.
No, I understand, no,
but-
I understand that
Yeah,
too.
but what I'm a little worried about, and I think, you know, and I support, we support the Historical Society, and it's a wonderful, idea and plan, and coming from a good place. I'm a little concerned that with no budget and, having to raise 22 times your annual income from giving, that's a hefty goal
Yes,
that
it
I'm
is.
not confident philanthropy can pick up for you. And I talked to somebody about this I've only been in it for, 10, 15 years, but historical societies are struggling writ large, and Bar Harbor used as an example. They're not struggling because they have that seasonal summer money coming
Money,
in
Exactly,
in huge volumes.
yeah.
Lots of programming, and my thought would be, I'm a little concerned that if we put the money up ahead of time, I'm a professional fundraiser, that even for me, that's a daunting goal. And I had asked about your budget, and your annual donations. I'd asked you to put that on there because I just wanted to get a sense
yeah,
of
of
where we're
course.
starting. Like, do you have a sense of, like, your biggest donor? And if your biggest donor is only giving, say, not only, is giving
No, I know.
$1,000, then your biggest donor usually drives your fundraising campaign and gives you a sense of where you can go with that. And so that concerns me a little bit, that we don't have any contributors that are sort of annually giving like $5,000, because then you could approach that
Yeah,
person and say, can you
exactly.
double your gift,
Mhm.
triple your gift?
Mhm.
So I'm concerned about that, and I'm also concerned about, all of these are highly competitive,
Yes,
and
they are.
Belvedere especially.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when we're looking at the goal versus the competition, I'm a little afraid that this much of an outset from the town at this point is pretty risky without a solid fundraising plan. And by a fundraising plan, just sort of some assurances that we have a donor base, that we can do an annual appeal that brings us this much money, will apply to X, Y, and Z. None of them are really assurances, and so I worry about that. And at the last meeting, when I was sort of encouraging grant writing, I didn't really have a sense then, and that's why I sort of backtracked to ask some questions of where we're starting from as far as the finances of the organization. And I don't say that to deflate folks. I'm just wondering if there's a less expensive way for Bucksport to preserve the items than moving a building. And historical societies don't commonly, like, completely renovate buildings. And so this is a big ask, even for an historical society, if you're talking like a $500,000 job, all told. So those are just my concerns, and I just wanted to air that, because I've sort of really been digging into, with my fundraiser hat, like, how far can we take this? And my recommendation would be that spend some more time figuring out how you can get funds, but in the meantime, maybe we could pivot to a different solution for the products that's more attainable. Because if the town put out 221, and the Historical Society could bring in, like, currently about 11,000 a year, but we don't know your expenses, you've gone through some of them, so we've got a hefty way to go to even get close to that.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I could support it just yet.
And one thing I do want to add, I mean, as a council, are we talking about, we're just going to lift the building up and then try to raise the money? Because that seems risky to me.
No,
Then
no.
how do we get from A to B?
Well,
Oh, I see.
first of all.
Oh, I thought that's
I'm
what
not
you
for
meant.
that. I mean, I'm not for lifting up the building and then going for grant funding, but how are we going to align all this grant funding?
Well, that's what I'm saying this, assuming the ask was for us to lift the building and then the fundraising comes.
Did we answer number 5?
I'm sorry.
We're gonna
No,
get
we're
to that.
not there yet.
Okay.
Let me say on fundraising, and I'm speaking for myself, I know the issue, and this will come up, about the town owning the building. Now, I can't speak for the whole society, it's got to be brought to them. I personally don't have a problem with that, providing there is an agreement of a long-term lease of some sort that we can operate. Most grants, and the time now for us to do anything like insulate the building, put in climate control, heat pumps, or whatever, we should be, Historical Society should be pursuing grants for those items now, because a lot of grants, and we ran into this on the Gatehouse property, when it was getting so difficult, they couldn't figure out how to sell it and whatever, and Stone Peak or Jura, and I forget which one, said, well, we'll just lease it to you. And what we pointed out, if it's leased, you don't own the building. A lot of grants are not interested. You have to own the building. And that's why it would behoove us to get the climate control portion at least done while the building is sitting where it is.
Any other? I just don't know how all this is gonna come together. I mean,
It's a lot the stars have to align perfectly.
Yes.
I mean, you could get 3 grants, and then if it takes another 18 months, what is the timing on, because you can't just sit on them forever.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to Belvedere,
Yeah.
and this is public knowledge. It closes February 15th. Awards wouldn't hit your bank or grantee's bank until June. So
But then they have to be spent a certain amount of time, but how do you,
within a year, yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
do climate control when you haven't
Yeah.
moved the building?
And I've
or done
applied
the-
to Libra before, so just so you know, I've almost been denied every time as well from my
Oh, have you? Well,
Libra
welcome
is.
to the club.
I mean, we are in probably the most competitive time to raise private dollars for anything. Applications have gone up writ large, and so, you know, I wanted to be optimistic last time, and but I'm also realistic with the climate and the environment that we're in. So I don't even private grants, the competitive nature of them, none of it's. We can't take any of it to the bank, or they can't take any of it to the
Sure.
bank.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
but I don't know how you could piecemeal a project together with doing the insulating it. I mean, it has to be a whole project. I don't know how you pull that together. And, I mean, truthfully, even at 210,000, if you add the price of the land, we're still going to a referendum in all likelihood.
Well, you've got to put it all as a final package.
Even if we just said the town's only gonna spend 221 and we're gonna convey the land, that's still over $500,000. Even if that passes, we're still over $500,000.
Why-
value of the
why-
land plus-
Why would you convey the land?
I'm just saying, anything we do, we'd have to go to the town, we're gonna commit a town resource. I would think we'd have to take that to a vote. I mean, it's not, nothing. So I just don't know how all of this fits together. And, grant funding, I mean, it seems like there needs to be more just straightforward fundraising to get closer to a goal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd have to put some more thought in a different role into that, but yeah, I think that's up to the Historical Society to sort of
Fair
figure out themselves, like, what
Yeah.
they have for resources for grant writing and all of that. But
Betty?
if you were to get a grant for
What's the plot of
weatherization,
land do
and
we know what that plot of land is appraised at?
Not
What's it
offhand,
appraised
I-
at, or what would it sell for?
Oh, it doesn't
It's
matter what
worth-
it's set,
it's
doesn't
worth-
matter what, it's gotta be what it's appraised at.
Well, it could be
No,
what's
what,
assessed.
because it's crazy what stuff would sell for. But what it's appraised at is what you gotta go with.
Or you mean assessed by the town?
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
assessed. Isn't that what
I don't know
oh,
what
said
that assessment is,
appraised,
because it's
didn't
not on the tax rolls right
I?
now.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on,
Okay,
oh,
well,
sorry.
No, no.
I'm just, yeah. So, a lot of this is early, the fundraising piece. I really need to speak with the Historical Society members, but I would like to start a capital campaign to begin with.
Yeah.
And see if we can go, well, we don't know how far we can go, but we really just need to start somehow. And then we can also do our fundraisers, like if we do another house tour, I don't see any reason why a good portion of that couldn't go in that pot. And yeah, just a capital campaign, just to
I
get
think-
started.
No matter
Yeah.
what's gonna occur, that would
I
make
wonder
sense.
if a
Yeah.
capital campaign could, regardless of whether or not it's about lifting the building, I think that's a great start. I think
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense, because then you'll
Mhm.
have a real sense of who's
support in the
inspired to give and
Mhm.
support, and that'll give you like the real temperature of your donor base.
Mhm.
And if you set it for a particular goal of like preservation of the artifacts, then, if it wasn't moving the building, or if it was either way, you've got a capital campaign to
Mhm.
do something
Right.
to preserve the history around
Right.
town.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I think really, personally, I think that's, and I said, I have not spoken with the entire society about that yet, but it's gonna come up. It's just, we're kind of early. And we realize this is not gonna be done overnight. We know this is gonna
Yeah.
take years, it's just too massive a project. The next thing you have on here is the status of the artifacts, which I know it's been a little bit like the story of the little red hen and the sky is falling, and it's not as bad as people think it is, but it does need work, and it needs to work as soon as possible. And we are starting that work, and that's a good thing. I've also, besides the archival folders and boxes, I've purchased packets of desiccant that will absorb moisture, so we're putting those in all the file drawers and cabinets. Those can be just taken out, put them in the microwave, dry them out, and start over. I would like them to address again the use of dehumidifiers. I guess there was a complaint about that in the past because put the electric bill up, but the Corinth Historical Society uses them all summer long. We have to use them. Two, we have moisture problems. So those things can be addressed. So I think, we can maintain the collection in that building with some modified strategies. And we're also looking to do, this is not approved yet, but we're looking to do a redesign of the inside before next year, so that it is more user-friendly. We have more floor space for people coming in, and it has better eye appeal. So it's not just a lot of stuff in cabinets. Are there any questions about the artifact status? There are some really, really wonderful, amazing things in that museum that need to be preserved, and they're treasures to me. So hopefully, others feel the same way.
Do you feel like the moisture piece would preserve it status quo to give you time for like a 2-year fundraising campaign?
I think we could probably manage that. I have looked in one trunk of clothes that is really, really needs to come out of there very soon. They're actually almost wet to touch, so that's something, I gotta get permission to take them out of the museum and do some work on them. But
Yeah.
I think most of the things, they'll be fine for a while.
And how much did it increase your electric bill? Do you have a sense?
I don't know, because I wasn't here at the
I
time.
can't remember, do you, Chris?
No, I really don't.
It was quite high, and I know the members that felt it was,
What type of dehumidifier?
Larry, what type of?
Like a commercial style or just
No,
the
the
stand-up home?
stand-up home.
And there's no heat pump in there right now.
No,
Yeah.
a heat pump is actually a good dehumidifier too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could raise money for just that. Yeah. would be
Yeah,
good.
another idea too would be,
Mhm.
some historical societies have raised funds to pay for electric bills and things like that, and that may be a part of a pitch if there
Mhm.
was somebody
Yeah.
who wanted to offset the increase in the electric bill to help that process, to make it happen.
That could be something to discuss, that the town look into how much it would cost to install a heat pump in the current building. That would be a much more affordable option for the temporary
For
time
short term.
being.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I wonder, Efficiency Maine offers some good,
They've got a really big one now. I don't know if municipalities can apply or not. I haven't.
well, it
looked.
wouldn't be, I mean, it would be the
Oh,
Historical Society. They'd be the
nonprofits,
applicant
either way,
as a
yeah.
nonprofit. but-
Yeah, we can look at that.
Yeah, I
We
think they're
can look at
rebating like 3,000 or 3,500.
It's substantial to
Yeah.
to the overall cost.
Mhm.
What's the square foot of that building? Do you know?
I don't know the square feet, but it's 24 by 66 and a half.
I agree with you, Ed, because I feel like the crisis point, right, is the artifacts, and then
Yes,
it just
yeah.
will give you so much more time to figure out the next
Yeah.
piece, because it's such a big piece.
It is a huge piece, and, you know, and the building itself is a bit too small as well for what we have. So, that makes it a little bit difficult too, because there are things that we need to store that won't be on display. But, you know, it's something we have to just bat around and see what we can come up with. Yeah.
Because what I'm getting mostly for feedback is, I haven't talked to anybody that's not in support
Well, that's
of
good to
doing
hear.
something with the
That's good to hear.
Historical Society. But at the same sense, they're looking at this year prioritizing, everyone I've talked to, animal shelters at top of their list. And
I'm not here to say anything about that, but I'm gonna bite my tongue.
the downtown rejuvenation is, you know, whether they agree with it or not, it's in the works, and it's a
Right.
big ticket item.
I know, and we are aware that, you know, nobody wants their taxes to go up. And you do have to create a balance here.
Yeah.
You can't tax people right to death. And taxes in this town are pretty high, so.
Well, I
feels
don't know
like
if I
the-
agree with that, but.
It feels like
You
the
don't?
dehumidifier is a
No,
great
no.
sweet spot.
They're
to
not?
sort of
Go
stabilize.
Brooks.
Oh, well, go to
I
Corinth.
assume that would be
You'll see
like
how low they
two
are.
head,
Yeah,
Have full services.
one on each
yeah, we
end.
don't
If you
have
put,
services,
like, a
but
basin
we do
building,
have
you
a
could
good
run
fire department.
One on either side, right?
That'd be a lot to ask for a single unit.
Well, it depends on the size of it.
Well, true.
Somebody smarter than me can figure that out.
Yeah,
Plus no
uh,
insulation too, guys, so.
Right.
No,
Yeah, but
If you're
the
looking,
dehumidifier would be the key part of that, you know.
Yeah, I'd be curious what an outfit said about
Yeah.
that.
we certainly can, you know, look into the deep.
And we've heard you, you said yourself that the
Right.
building's a little too small. Is there
It is
any
too small.
discussion about pursuing a home?
Well, I have had it in my mind, I don't know, you know, that I don't know.
Because if you look at the overall cost,
I think there's been some minor discussion, maybe, yeah.
it would be a
Yeah.
lot simpler.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
and it's a lot to maintain a bigger place too, so.
But we're gonna
That's another-
construct, if we were to
Yeah.
put this up, there's gonna be much bigger bills, expenses for the overall. I mean, the electric bill is gonna be
Yeah.
more than 2 dehumidifiers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so we're aware of that. Yeah, we are. Yes, it's a very complex problem. I'm
Yeah,
not saying it's easy
yeah.
at all. It's not.
It's-
And
yeah.
really will take us a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And we can use all the ideas from you guys, the public, that, you know, we might just go forget it, but you might have something that just really sparks us to say, yeah, that's gonna work.
I'll
So-
certainly, if I hear of anything in my
Mhm.
world, I'll
Yeah.
email you and let you know of any opportunities I hear about that would be helpful.
Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
And I'm
Yeah.
also happy offline, not to take up time at a meeting, but
Mhm.
to just hear thoughts if you're applying for something, or to think of some strategy.
Yeah.
Because I don't
that'd be
think
great.
now's the time to spend
No.
$220,000 at this early stage in the plan.
And we don't expect that. I'm sorry if you got the impression that we thought we were gonna come here and you're just gonna dole out the money and it was gonna be
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
a done deal, and that really isn't the case.
I mean, I could write a check, but she bounced like
Yeah,
just to make you happy.
yes.
If possible, I would like to see the Historical Society get a couple of bids, to have somebody that knows what they're talking about, because I don't know what I'm talking about as far as heat pumps, but
Yes,
see
yes, we can do that.
to see what size you would need.
Mhm.
I'm assuming I know what it's gonna need, but I don't, so.
Right. Yeah, we certainly can. I think the way the building's constructed, it might even be might be that they're gonna say we need two,
I'm
Probably.
thinking two heads.
one on each.
You get
yeah, two
one
heads,
bigger
right.
unit with two heads.
Because we have two rooms and kind of a divide in the middle, which is gonna constrict the flow of air.
I think the building's just much too long for, unless it's one massive unit, but.
Yeah. Mhm. I agree.
Do the
But-
heat pumps dehumidify
Yeah.
as well as,
Yeah.
They have a
as
drive
good
function.
as the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
ones?
Mhm.
They're extremely efficient
Yeah.
Awesome.
and much less cost-effective
Really?
than, much more cost-effective than the old stand-up home ones.
Mhm.
And you don't have to empty them.
Right, they just pump
Correct,
it out.
yes. Mhm. Okay, any more discussion on that? Do you want to go on to the National Register status?
Sure.
You ready? Okay. So I did talk to Michael Bain, who is the person who would decide whether this project would go any further than the state. I can tell you that the last project plan that was presented to them is an absolute non-starter. They would not go for that at all. He would, in consideration of the rising oceans and the storm surge threats, the flooding threats, that is a consideration that they can take and would take, and because the building is no longer near the railroad tracks, it only qualifies now in the architectural status and would still qualify in that status. But we have to be careful about the site, and we have to be careful about, how it's done. We need a little finesse here to get it through, but he was more on the positive than the negative side as far as it remaining on the National Register. He also offered to look for some grants for us. And if it would be approved, if the plan goes through, first we would have to jump through a bunch of hoops. And we do have to have a site. We can't do anything without a site. So we can't even ask them, because has to be very specific. So if we had the site, if we presented all of what we need to present to them, and that was approved, then it goes on to Washington. And that's the keeper of the registry, and there's a process there, and they have so many days to review it and come back and say yes or no. And then, it's still not a done deal, because once the building would be moved, then they would have to come inspect it, a final inspection, to say it would stay. So that is the process.
That on government standards is a very long time.
Well, yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of time, yes. It's not gonna be tomorrow, let's just say. Yeah, it's gonna take, it could take a year, probably. Okay,
All right.
anything else?
I really just appreciate you guys diving into this. I know it's hard and hard to sort of take a deep dive into all the complicated pieces of it.
Yeah, there are many, yeah.
And now if Larry could speak on site options, and
Sure.
at Larry's request, if you could hold all your questions till he finishes. If not, he'd be distracted.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Before he starts, can I ask one question?
Yes.
Has there always been an option of, has there ever been an option of not raising this? Is there a reason that it has to be raised?
Well, surge, you know,
Storm
potential
surge.
storm
Has it,
surge.
okay, but has it, did it flood last year when we had the
No.
big surge?
It came
Close,
close.
came close.
Came
The
close?
bridge came up.
And with anticipated sea level rise, as if it goes like it is, would we want to rebuild in the same spot?
Well, I'm not saying rebuild.
Yeah,
I
Or
wasn't
put it on a-
talking about rebuilding.
Put it on a foundation?
the,
I
yeah,
was talking about remodeling.
for that area, Rich, right, that we looked at a chart that sort of indicated that it was event-related for Bucksport. Bucksport wouldn't, we wouldn't necessarily have
Insulation,
permanent sea rise, we would have it,
heat pumps.
with
stuff of
storms.
that
Storms,
nature
yeah,
without raising.
Yeah, storm surge, yeah.
You're saving cost. I mean, I know we're planning for what ifs, but if it hasn't, there are other things you can do cosmetically around to protect for raising seawater that might cost less.
I didn't hear you.
Perhaps.
Can you
Block
pass me what's in front of you?
I'm sorry.
No, one's yours.
Was there two? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was just thinking of it. Could you work on what's there and, but, sorry. All yours, Larry, sorry.
So most of these are my thoughts to start with. And one question that's always been in my mind is, number one here, what would become of the railroad station if the Historic Society relocated? It's always one of my concerns. And a bit of history, addressing the depot location. I've got 4 vintage maps, but there's actually 5 there. But it gives you the information, I won't go right down through there, you can read that, but there's only 2 maps, and they're actually fire insurance maps. One from 1884 and one from 1901 that actually shows that depot where it currently is. The others show it more where the gazebo is.
Yep.
So there's either mistakes on maps or no telling. So, page 2, understanding that nothing happens until funds are secured, I submit the following plans for the Historical Society Museum. Plan A would be move the building to a full foundation on Main Street. The advantages there would allow for climate control, elevates the building to ward off floodwaters, improves visibility from Main Street, provides a scenic overlook, provides space for new restrooms, information center, display area for possibly antique fire equipment. Makes the building ADA compliant, accessibility, provides an amphitheater as noted on the ADAPT plan. Disadvantages would be the cost. It occupies valuable piece of real estate. The museum zone is open limited hours. Deeding the building over to the town ties the Historical Society's hands for applying for grants. I have a concern, a DOT storm drain appears to dissect the northeast corner of the building, requiring a shift to the west. And then a note, the existing restroom building could be converted to a utility shed. Plan B would continue business as usual and take the chances on saving the historic artifacts in the historic building. Definitely not recommended. Plan C would continue in its current location and poly the crawl space to address moisture issues only. Also not recommended. Plan D would remain at the current location, raise the building 12 inches on a frost wall with a concrete floor. The advantages there would allow for climate control, improves protection from floodwaters, only improves, and lowers the cost. Disadvantages, still requires wheelchair ramp. In fact, increases the length of the ramp from 12 feet to 24 feet. Fails to provide improved visibility, an information center, new restrooms, additional display space, but it still occupies a valuable piece of real estate. Concerns the DOT storm drain may dissect northeast corner of the building. Plan E would move the building to the area of the gazebo. Two of the vintage maps is shown on page 1. Show the depot at this location. Specifics: set on a frost wall with a concrete floor. Foundation to be 4 feet on the riverside, 1 foot on the upper side, with a wheelchair ramp of 12 feet. Cost paid for by the town. Move or demo the gazebo, frost wall foundation, jack and move the building, provide new water and sewer, provide new electric service. Cost paid by the Historical Society. Building repairs, climate control, wheelchair ramp, insulation, window weatherization. Deed to the building to remain with the Historical Society for the grants purposes. Town to deed the land to the Historical Society. Advantages: town gains a total piece of valuable real estate. The building stays close to where the tracks were. You don't have to deal with possibly a storm drain. Excuse me. Disadvantages: Historical Society loses its visibility. Protection from flood waters is not completely addressed. Realizing that this project will not happen for several years, I offer these solutions to questions that have surfaced. Possible joint ownership of the building, possible joint ownership of the land. To put the town in a good place to fund Plan A, establish a separate line item in the town budget for $75,000 per year, whereby after 4 years you've got $300,000 that will be available in historic property account. To put the Historical Society in a good financial position, allow 4 years to raise $300,000 through yearly fundraisers, donations, and grants, realizing that there will be a significant timing issue with small grants. The Historical Society will pursue having the museum staying open 3 months of the year, mid-June through mid-September, and longer hours, possibly 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week. That's 240 hours per year versus the 100. And then as Betty's noted, an accurate plan must be submitted to the Maine Historic Preservation for their approval. Now, a question has come up in the past about why are our estimates so much different than Lewis and Mom's cost estimate back in 2019. I've given you a copy of their cost estimate and a comparison to ours, and so you can see the difference. There's a lot of stuff built into theirs. It's just uncalled for, I'd say. That's what I've got.
Any questions or comments for Larry?
It's just something to think about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry. You got great handwriting, by the way. Actually, you read all of that. 'Cause, 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 'cause,
just have sort of a question about Plan D and a sense of how much that costs just to lift it up. But it's,
12 inches,
yeah,
how much it would cost?
I recognize you don't have a bid or anything for that, so it's probably, when I asked the question, I realized you wouldn't have the answer. But I was just curious.
I marked a question mark in that grid for that.
Me too, yeah. I'm just curious of that.
D was to raise it 12 inches where it sits, correct?
Yeah, it would, sort of just the water intrusion piece, but.
At least if we did get a surge, that right now it's setting on cement blocks. So if you got a good surge and still have it float away,
Yeah.
if you had a good solid foundation under it, then it's presents some protection, considerable amount of protection.
I mean,
Go ahead.
no, I mean, and with that, I know with the initial photo and the plan, there's stuff out front that could be done that would offer protection too, I would think.
Are you talking about maybe putting like a berm in the front or something
I'm
like
not
that?
saying
Well,
a
then we're
berm.
talking about things on the waterfront,
On the
because we know that we're gonna have
You know,
water
things
rise.
that-
Right.
You know, like
Otherwise-
if you had, we'll say to the, if, I'm trying to think, front walkway, if there was, you know, if there was a 12-inch foundation under it, and then leading up to it, there's another, the walkway is built up, or,
Well,
or.
the way it
I'm just
sets now,
saying,
it
for
sets,
instance.
it sets, so it's kind of level with the parking lot on, or at the street side, but the land slopes off,
Mhm.
and so it's kind of on stilts on the other side, maybe, I don't know,
Right.
what would you say, 30 inches maybe? 3 feet?
On the water side?
Yeah, on the water side. Probably 3 feet,
Yeah.
yeah, higher, you know, so the land would have to be leveled under it to make that
Mhm.
foundation to begin with,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
You know, I'm just trying to picture in my head things that you could do on that side to protect it more on D.
Well, I think, Paul, we did talk at a resilience, and was there some kind of, something to break the waves, Rich, that we talked about at resiliency?
Yeah, the master plan for the waterfront will be presented on the 22nd of this month.
And that might shed some light on some other mechanisms to
Yeah.
protect it from surge.
From surge, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
'cause
right.
Obviously, we want to protect the waterfront too, so I mean, things that are going to protect that waterfront are also going to protect that building.
Yes.
Anything,
Yes, you should.
anything on that,
Mhm.
on that
waterway.
waterway, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that is a
Yeah,
different
there
option.
may be plantings or things like that that would make a difference.
Yeah.
Correct.
I don't know that. I did want to say that we had a board meeting this morning, and we have approved longer not longer daytime hours, but we have approved being open like the mid-June to mid-September already. Now, it's, the board has approved it, it has to go to the society, but every time we're in there at that time of year, either summer or fall, we do have people coming in, you know, when we're just working. So we think it's gonna be beneficial to be open at that time.
And we have a school to go behind them.
Good.
Yeah, we had one school tour, we're having another one on Thursday, so.
Public school.
Great.
That's awesome.
I saw the photo of the Reach kids were in there. They
Mhm.
had a really good time.
So, is there anything else? No?
Anything else on the committee, or do we move on to next steps?
One more question for Larry. If you had to choose one of these plans, what do you think's the best option? No pressure.
Well, there's a reason for Plan A being
Yep.
number one,
Yep. Okay.
so Plan A.
Thank you.
Next steps?
Yep. I think that we got a lot of discussion on the big project here, and it's gonna take many meetings, many discussions. But I'd like to put it forward to the council to look into. If they can get quotes on a sufficient heat pump, I think that would be a good gesture on the town's part and doable, affordable.
And it would take some of the pressure off you guys having
Right.
to chew gum while, what's the saying? Whatever that
Run
saying
while
is.
chew-
Running.
Run while chew gum, or
Something
it
like
takes
that.
some pressure off with your bigger ideas.
And it could happen as quick as the town,
Right.
Or contractors available to,
or contractors available, yeah.
Yep.
But there's a lot of heat pump contractors.
that's true, there is.
They're a dime a dozen.
Okay.
They're everywhere.
All right.
Should not.
What's that?
Insulation of the building,
It
it's not insulated.
Mm. But you don't need insulation, right, for
No,
dehumidifying?
they do not,
Yeah.
yeah. Excuse me. The insulation would come into play if we were to heat it later into the season. We have no heating at all now, so
Yeah.
it's not an option for us. But if we had enough money, we could do that.
If
But
you had
we don't-
Santa Claus, then-
We don't have enough money
So
for
what
that
are the
anyway.
next steps, Betty, for the society towards, as Tracy described, a capital campaign and all that? What will those steps be for the Historical Society?
We're just gonna start begging for money.
Okay.
Pretty much. And we'll do fundraisers as well. And really, this has to go before the society. It's just not been there yet. I think they'll go for it, but, it is a lot of work. And if you look at us, we all have white hair and we're kind of crippled up. And we don't have the energy of young people. So it just takes us a little longer to do that too. We might have more time, but that's about it. So,
I agree with Ed. I think, take a step to preserve against the moisture if we can. That seems like low-hanging fruit that we could bring to council. So I make a motion to,
Reasonable price tag, potentially affiliated with that also.
yeah, exactly.
Not that it matters, but does air conditioning hurt? Any of the,
no, cold never hurts.
because air conditioning's naturally
Yeah.
a dehumidifier
Yeah.
as well, but,
In the wintertime, storage is not a problem.
okay.
But here, I have to, a caveat to that is, there seems to be always moisture in Bucksport.
Yeah, I got a big
Well,
dehumidifier in
that-
the basement.
You know, it's like we're on the river, and there you go, there's always that
I
problem.
had to wear boots in my basement when I first bought my house.
Yeah.
And there would be the matter of 2 heat pumps cranking AC in the summer, electrical is
Gonna be,
gonna be hefty. But dehumidify is pretty efficient.
Yeah, we probably don't need the air conditioning because we always have a breeze through there.
Yeah.
You know, it's really the dehumidifying
Yeah.
piece that we need.
And those
Yeah.
costs would eventually be part of your operating budget anyway, no matter
Yes,
what building you
right.
had, you'd have to dehew it, you'd have to.
And
I
we
just
do
made up
have
a
to
word,
address
but-
having an operating budget. But,
Yeah.
I mean, that just hasn't been done in the
Yeah.
past, and it is something that needs to be done. It's something we did in Corinth, and it's not an easy thing to take on, but,
Yeah, yeah.
I got 2 in my house.
we'll be looking at it, definitely.
There's a dry mode on all of the heat pumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't you have to
Oh, I've heard, yeah.
yeah, it just takes the moisture out, and it does feel cooler. when-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
it does
it
work,
always feels
yeah.
cooler if it's drier, so,
Yep.
yeah. Mhm.
I
So-
run dry. I run dry in the summer in my basement on mine, and AC on the one upstairs. And it's perfect.
So anything else under next steps? Or we good with the heat pump
Do
aspect?
you need a motion?
We had a motion.
Second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of sending the heat pump consideration to the council? Okay, suppose, I mean, there's three of us.
Would you be getting estimates for that, or would you want the Historical Society to do
I
that?
think you should, from a, you know, from a museum standpoint, you know, talk
right.
to some people about what's gonna make the most sense for you.
Okay,
And Efficiency Maine, I think, would make sense too, but.
yes, I will call them. Yeah, I'll call them.
And
There's
sometimes the
efficiency main.
contractors will be able to tell you about the
Yeah.
rebates themselves, yeah.
There's
They
a-
will, but I'd rather hear it from Efficiency Maine first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just not that trusting a person. Sorry, got
There's,
it.
there's a rep for Efficiency Maine that lives in Orland. I have his card in my stack of cards in
Oh,
my
that's
office.
a good thing, yeah.
And he was very helpful with me with
Mhm.
some of the projects I've done, so
Okay,
Uh,
that's a good idea.
we should try to reach out to him and see if he'd be
Yeah.
willing to help out with
That
that.
sounds like a good resource, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because they are big rebates right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
And some of them are income-based.
Right, but where this is.
nonprofit's gonna be a
Zero
different.
income.
Oh, yeah.
There's a nonprofit, yeah.
Or not,
Yeah.
whatever it's gonna be.
Yeah, I've applied through Efficiency Maine for a nonprofit,
Mhm.
like 6 years ago and got them.
Mhm.
Okay. So, anything else from the public? Item 5,
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
all those in favor?